Hello, Professor Cantley here. Welcome back to Advanced Writing. In this video, I'm going to talk about logical fallacies, and this is section 5 of the chapter in the book on argumentation and fallacies. Usually, writing classes will cover fallacies, and you'll go through like a lot of the traditional fallacies and traditional names for those fallacies. You've probably done that before in a previous writing course or in a general education or liberal arts course, and I'm not going to go through all of that here in this video, but instead I want to talk about some more kind of higher level examples that you might not have gotten necessarily or seen, and these are relevant to academic and professional contexts. Fallacies are of course used a lot in advertising. They are used in politics, especially during elections, of course, and sometimes in academic contexts. And we're going to look at a few examples like that from politics and academia here. Just a few examples. And I'll start with kind of a simple one. Number 1, Socrates is a man, all men are pigs, therefore Socrates is a pig. This is kind of a play with the classical syllogism. So a syllogism is your kind of very traditional logical framework. Statement A, statement B, therefore C. So A, Socrates is a man. B, all men are pigs. The conclusion, therefore, Socrates is a pig. Now, there's an obvious problem here. So pig, by the way, is a term for like a sexist man, a man who's a jerk, and a man who acts uncivilized or acts like a sexist jerk. So this is kind of problematic because this is a generalization. So there's a problem with one of the premises, one of the claims. So while the argument might technically be correct, if the statement were true, you would have to conclude that Socrates is a pig. So it's technically correct, but it's not really a valid argument because one of the premises is problematic. It's an overgeneralization that all men are pigs. So it's a wrong conclusion. It's a false conclusion. All men are not pigs. Okay, that's an overgeneralization, and overgeneralization is a classic logical fallacy. Next, some people doubt evolution, often for maybe religious reasons, and they don't understand the science, and they attempt to dismiss it as just a theory. It's a theory that means it hasn't been proven. This is a semantic fallacy, semantic having to do with word meanings. They're playing with two different meanings of the word theory. In kind of conversational or everyday context, a theory is like an idea, a guess, or a conjecture. My theory is that Biden won't run again because he's too old. Okay, that's a conjecture, a guess, a hypothesis. But in science and academic English, as we've discussed before, a theory is an explanatory framework designed to explain something, and it's a complex set of ideas which forms a coherent explanation of something, and this one has been proven. So that's a semantic fallacy. They're playing with different meanings of the word theory. 3. In the 1990s, this is a true example. President Clinton had a little affair with a White House intern, Monica Lewinsky. Now, when an investigator asked him, "Have you ever been alone with Ms. Lewinsky?" he answered, "It depends on how you define being alone." What is alone? He was trying to play semantic games here. It obviously didn't work, and this got him into trouble. Okay, don't do this. 4. Here's a more academic example, and we'll come back to politics in a minute. Okay, critical period hypothesis. That's a hypothesis, or it's become actually more of a theory now. It's kind of grown really big. And it basically says, well, the children have an ability to learn their first language naturally from exposure and interaction with their parents, caregivers, those around them, until a certain age, maybe around 10 or 12 or puberty, when this ability starts to decline and their language learning changes. So when you learn languages as a teenager or an adult for the first time, Yeah, you can still learn it, but the learning process is very different, and it's going to be much harder to learn a language and become fluent at it. So it does not say that you can't become fluent or even native-like with enough effort and verbal talent, but the learning process is essentially different. And that's what the critical period hypothesis says. There are a few scholars who are skeptical of this and point out examples of adults. Say, hey, that adult became fluent in a second language and is very native-like. Oh, sure. The critical period idea allows for that. It just says that, number one, their learning process as an adult is different. There might be some similarities with the way a child learns a language, but there are some essential key differences in the mental mechanisms and the learning mechanisms and the learning strategies that are needed for that. And if you do a really detailed analysis of their speech, you're going to see some subtle differences that maybe a linguist could diagnose. So they may sound very fluent, but there are going to be some subtle differences. So that's kind of a straw man argument that sometimes you hear against the critical period hypothesis. It misstates what the hypothesis says. It misrepresents it. And it says, they think according to the critical period hypothesis, it should be impossible for a person to become fluent and even reach a native-like ability in the language. Well, that's not what it says. It says that the learning mechanisms are different, quite different. The mental mechanisms, the learning process is different, and it's generally harder. It's not as natural. And that's a common logical fallacy you hear in certain areas of linguistics, certain circles of linguistics and such. Misrepresenting the critical period, or what Chomsky says, other theories of Chomsky. And I'm not, saying I believe in everything Chomsky says. I'm critical of some of his ideas, but I prefer to be fair and honest in my assessments. And you should be too if you're in the field. Number 5, another political example. Here's a famous one from recent politics. 2016, in the Democratic presidential race, Hillary Clinton is running against her leftist challenger, Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders criticized Clinton for various reasons, including this. One time, Clinton had apparently a secret meeting with Wall Street bankers who provided her campaign some money. Not necessarily in itself a bad thing, but it looks kind of fishy, kind of suspicious, especially because she refused to answer specific questions about what happened at the meeting. What did you say at the meeting? What was said? Did you make them some promises? Did they promise you something? Did you promise them something? What happened at the meeting? I think these are questions that should be answered. So Bernie Sanders was bringing this up in a debate. And he said, they make millions of dollars of campaign contributions. They expect to get something. Everybody knows that. And as he was asking her, okay, tell us what happened at the meeting, what was said, Clinton responded with this, wait a minute, Senator, not only do I have hundreds of thousands of donors, most of them small, I'm very proud of the fact that for the first time, a majority of my donors are women. 60%, that is 60% of the people who donate to her campaign are individual women. Okay, fine, but that's irrelevant. That's a distraction, an irrelevant distraction, and politicians love to use this in debates and elections and in speeches. True, but it's irrelevant here. It's a distraction, and it's kind of a popular appeal. I'm kind of the candidate of the average person and the average women. It's irrelevant. He asks you about your relationship with these Wall Street bankers and a secret meeting that looks suspicious. And then Clinton brings up another similar line of very questionable reasoning. I represented New York. She was a senator from New York previously. And I represented New York in 9/11 when we were attacked. Where we were attacked, we were attacked in downtown Manhattan where Wall Street is. I spent a lot of time and effort helping them rebuild. That was good for New York. It was good for the economy. It was a way to rebuke the terrorists who attacked our country. So she's implying by standing with Wall Street bankers, I'm standing against terrorists. What? What? What's the connection between your alliance with Wall Street bankers and standing up against terrorism? There is no connection. This is kind of a popular appeal to people's popular emotions, patriotism and emotions. It has nothing to do with the question. Sanders is obviously asking something that has a moral kind of an ethical or moral or pathos kind of appeal. I'm appealing to the popular people. Clinton is kind of in league with Wall Street bankers whose intentions are probably selfish. What did she do with them? What did she say to them? What happened there? How much money are they giving her? And Clinton is trying to make a really phony sounding popular appeal. There's no logical connection between terrorism and meeting with Wall Street bankers. There's no connection. And she totally refused to answer the questions about her meeting with Wall Street bankers. And this happens all the time in politics. Yes, Clinton is an intelligent person. I think she had leadership problems and problems connecting with the average person. That's part of the reason she lost. And I also think part of the reason she lost was sexism. People didn't like her because she was a strong woman, an intelligent, smart woman, and she is smart, but she sometimes lacks good judgment. So yes, there was definitely sexism involved too, some unfair judgments against her because she was a strong, intelligent, professional woman. I prefer to be, I think, fair in my assessment of her despite my own political views. Can you think of other examples of fallacies, especially in politics or the academic world? I'm sure you can find countless examples in politics. In academic fields, it happens too. Intelligent people, like in linguistics, sometimes engage in logical fallacies. Another example from linguistics, okay, some of Chomsky's theories about grammar and syntax, they're theoretical arguments, and I think an honest criticism is this: where's the empirical or scientific evidence for some of these things you claim exist in your theory, some of these abstract structures and changes that happen? What's the empirical evidence? And there is empirical evidence for some of it, but for some of these things, there is a problem with empirical evidence, and people within that theoretical framework will say, but it works. And others will say, well, where's the evidence? We need not just that it works. I mean, different things might work for the wrong reasons. We need scientific evidence. And I think that is sort of a fallacy, or at least very different assumptions about what it means to prove a theory correct. Because the more empirically and scientifically minded people want empirical evidence for some of these theories about language and linguistics. So, if you're going on for further studies in academia, be aware of this. Fallacies can happen. Even smart people, professionals, academics can engage in fallacies, so watch out with them. That's it for now. Hope you have a good time with your final papers. Hope it goes well for you. In some following videos, we'll talk more about citation systems and about style and grammar issues. So until then, see you in the next video, and goodbye.